Hey, my name is Alex Johansson, and this is my game Morse. I'm going to be giving you a quick preview of how the game's put together and the first few missions. Morse is a minimalist strategy game in which the player must use timing, tactics, and telecommunications to break the attrition of the Great War. The game itself is currently being developed for iPhone, but I've got aspirations to bring it to other platforms in time with external funding. We're going to take a look at the first mission, which is capturing an enemy trench. As part of the game, you play as Ida Brockett. She is an operator, this new piece of technology that's being developed in secret, which calls down artillery strikes with precision on enemy trenches. So as we start out, we can see that there is enemy gunners entrenched in the opposite end of the map. We need to destroy those to make sure that our soldiers can get through safely without being caught up in barbed wire or gunned down. So first we need to open up the help menu to see what letters we're using this mission. We've got the word charge. I'm going to use the letter E. There's a single tap to reach the trench that the enemies are in. I can then just push the red button and that will wipe out the opposition in that trench. From here, I need to also destroy the barbed wire, otherwise they'll get caught up in that. So I'm going to do something slightly more complex. I'm going to do dot and then dash. And then, yeah, I can fire away. And the way that the game works is, and this is a recent development in terms of me building the game, is when you fire an artillery shot, that then advances the turn of gameplay. So it's a turn-based game. So I'm just going to hide this just for now so you can kind of see the troops coming in. And you can see what I'm talking about when I say this. At the moment, there's two states for the infantry. One is moving and then the other one is shooting. In time, I'd like to kind of add a bit more nuance to the different actions that they can do. But for now, with it being quite early on in development, I'm keeping things simple. As I kind of launch more artillery, you can see that the troops continue to advance. I'm going to start targeting these units as they come in. I'm going to pop open my interface and I'm going to move vertically. So you can see that along the top I've got letters and then along the sides I've got numbers. If I enter numbers, I can kind of move vertically. So I'm going to do 5 dashes, which is 0. Now I'm going to just pick which trench I need to be targeting. And you can see on the left, so the right-hand side of the screen, that there's a... Whoops. So one thing real quick is if you make a mistake, it won't, you pick a letter that can't be moved to. It'll just retain where you are currently, but it will print out on the little printer what letter you've tried to move to. So you can kind of learn what letters you've accidentally inputted. And as I was saying before, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that there's a little ammo fill. And what that allows you to do is plan in advance. So you can decide which targets, artillery-wise, you want to prioritize. Because obviously you don't want to waste a large artillery shot on just one individual. At the moment, there's 3 types of artillery. The first one is a small, precise shot, which covers 1 square roughly, which if you're just hitting individuals, that's very useful. You've got this artillery kind of triple shot, which covers an entire row. So in this case, where I've got multiple units on multiple rows, I can clear them out. And as you'll see in the next mission, or you might have seen at the start, there's also a larger shot which covers kind of a wide area of effect, which is useful for clearing up groups. So now at this point, I'm basically just going to be kind of whittling down the enemy soldiers and trying to clear the trench ahead of the units arriving. In the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you can see that the indicator with the 2 flags on it. That is basically your kind of objective marker, and as more of my units make it into the trench, or reach the trench line, that'll start to fill up. So I've just got to make sure that some of them actually make it. So friendly fire is possible to happen in this game, and obviously you kind of need to tried to plan around that. So if you've got like a really powerful shot and you've got a bunch of units lined up, you might have to find a space in your on the map to kind of unload the actual kind of dangerous artillery shot without killing, kind of other units. Originally, the game itself had a full alphabet available in terms of letters, and the reason I changed that was because a lot of people would just rely on the same letters. The most easy letters to use in Morse are T, E, S, ones that remain in their type. So dot 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 or dash dash dash. Very easy to remember. Things like O and S. So by picking a mix of kind of a small cluster of more complex letters, it means that people have to focus more on letters that they usually wouldn't bother with. And it can mean over time I can weave that into the narrative. So as you'll see further on, it's just a kind of subtle way of connecting the narrative and the gameplay. And my plan is as the game advances, you'll make narrative decisions that will then lead to different maps being created. Or what I mean by that is if you pick between two narrative decisions, maybe a section of the dialogue, in the case of this one it's the word escorting, maybe you have another word like ambush or something like that, or a longer word that's more complex, or a word with more difficult letters in, is the other decision that you have to pick between in the narrative. Yeah, that's something I'm kind of thinking about implementing to create a bit of variance in the gameplay and make some kind of replayability elements. So we moved on to the next map. This is kind of more the original game itself. The inspiration of it, the original game that I made was called Dot Dot Splash, which was like a small, basically like a battleship style game. Originally the game was just naval combat, so this is an element that has remained throughout it, and as I said, kind of led to inspiration for the rest of the game. As you can see here, I've got a different map here, and I've got to destroy these ships and defend my units as they get across the map. You'll see that I've got the larger area of effect missiles lined up, so if I fire those, you can see that it hits multiple targets. And I'll just need to adjust that to make sure it hits all three again. These ships can usually take 2 hits and then they sink. And you can see here that I've opened it up to wider rows, so there's a 4th row included in here, so your attention to where you need to be focusing obviously needs to change over time. Yeah, so at the moment I'm just clearing the waterway for these units. Just in case you didn't catch it in the dialogue, we need to deliver multiple ships of soldiers to get those units to the battlefield. My plan with the final game is to make it that you have different units on different carriers, so you'll have to kind of directly prioritize which ships that you want to make it across. It might be that you sacrifice a certain unit to benefit your specific situation. The actual original game, if you play it online, is surprisingly difficult. A lot of what I've been doing with this version of the game is trying to prevent the player from getting overwhelmed. So, as I said, the original game had 3 simultaneous battlefields that you had to maintain and manage. So you had land, air, and sea that you were all controlling simultaneously, and you had a full alphabet to try and memorize. So what I've done instead at this point is simplify it down to just a 1 map at a time, just to help the player understand things a little bit better. When I originally pitched this game to publishers back in 2016, when I was still very, very early on in terms of commercial development, one of the main pieces of feedback that came across was how are you going to teach the player, like having a language as a prerequisite to play the game is quite a big barrier to entry. I personally don't agree with that, in that there is a lot of video games, for example, where having to learn the taxonomy of systems and figure out how things like Guitar Hero, for example, a lot of people come into that with no understanding of how the inputs work for that game. It's just a matter of me building a sophisticated tutorial. So obviously what I have done is I've simplified down the systems that you're having to interact with, and I've also made the tutorial a bit more sophisticated. My plan eventually is to have multiple maps, but for these first few missions, I'll be trying to keep things nice and simple and straightforward as possible. So as part of the wider game itself, at the moment the dialogue sections are quite bare bones. It's very much just like a debriefing of the player, and then you go to your mission. My plan in the final game, if I can, get funding, would be to expand that to have like a full dialogue system. The game is kind of set at like a pseudo Bletchley Park, so a manor house in the countryside that's been repurposed for military purposes. And yeah, you'll get to kind of explore the complex and talk to all the people on the site. And one of the things that I'm really excited about as part of the game is historically women were quite present in these technical roles, particularly in computing, and as part of the game there's going to be a significant number of the cast that are going to be women. There's going to be some really interesting stories that we're going to be able to tell in that environment, and I brought on a writer, which Danny should hopefully be able to create some really, really interesting dialogue once I've got these systems finished being built. Mission now, this is basically where you've got the units that cleared the trench earlier, who are trying to hold the line till backup arrives. As I kind of fire more shots here, we're going to have more units arrive. So I'm just going to start targeting people as they come down. Hopefully this little gunner in the bottom left-hand corner can survive. But in this mission in particular, there's not only me firing, there's also a rival gunner who is also launching artillery shots, and it appears that we've lost our gunner. So this might be a mission in which we have to be pretty on our toes to make sure that we don't let the Germans overrun the trench. Let's check the full length of this, because our lines have increased by 1 again. Now this is where these triple shots come in a lot more useful, when you're getting a much longer battlefield to manage. So like here, for example, with the larger shots, there is a bit more bleed over, so even though you're targeting one grid, it will catch other people who are like on the edge of that grid. Let's just take a look at the trench, if anyone is left now. So it's truly us to try and hold out and hold back the German advance. So you can see that one unit has kind of snuck by. On that first mission we learnt the letter A, so we can kind of target this player a little bit easier. You'll see in my case I've been able to memorise this without really looking at the help sheet. That's because I've just been playing this a bunch, and kind of through the osmosis of developing this, I've learned the language, and it's something that I kind of hope that will happen with a lot more people as they play this game. I'm really looking forward to playtesting, getting people to playtest this, because I've obviously got the hang of what I'm doing here. It's going to be interesting to see how people cope with it, because the last few times that I've tested it, players have, when I originally had it as non-turn-based, they found it quite overwhelming. I'm hoping that by making it turn-based, it takes a lot of that stress out of it, but still kind of preserves some of the kind of tactical interest. So there's one more unit left. left and backup appears to have arrived, so just get rid of that player, and the mission should... Oh wait, there might be one more. Let's check. Yes, there's 2 more up top. So we just need to eliminate these 2 more units, and the mission's complete. Ah, mistake. Great stuff. Well, thank you for watching this video. If you're interested in the project, feel free to check out my blog on TigSource. That's where I'm going to be trying to document the process of developing the game, and if you're wanting more regular updates, you can follow me on Twitter, AlexVSCoding. That's where I'll be writing about the progress of the game and what I plan to do with it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me there or on the devlog. Thanks for checking out the game, and take care.